let's go over to northern New Jersey and talk about Abby Zwillman. He's called Longy Zwillman. My grandfather never once referred to him as Longy. I don't know. I mean, he would know, but I don't know. Maybe that's what some people call him. Anyway, he was a boss over in northern New Jersey, roughly from 1940 to 1959 when he killed himself, and that's what we're going to talk about now. How he killed himself. He worked closely with the old timers, Lucky Luciano. Uh, let me stop for a moment. He also worked with Costello. Let me stop for a moment and say, Lucky Luciano, when you get away from these so-called self-appointed crime historians who glorify these, Luciano was a drug dealer. That's what he did. He sold heroin, he sold cocaine early on, and that's how he got into crime in the first place. And then when he was booted out of the country from Italy, he ran dope there too. When Zwillman made his way over to Hollywood with the rest of the mob, he was known as the dope guy. He didn't sell dope there, I don't think, but he was passing it out. And maybe it was to make himself popular. Something to think about. He was otherwise thought of as a rational man, calm. He knew how to make money. He seldom used violence. He held an enormous amount of political power in northern New Jersey. His wife was from the old established Jewish family that helped to build the New York stock market. And that was part and part of who he was. He was desperate for respectability. So I'm sure he married her because he loved her, but he also carried on a pretty steamy affair with Jean Harlow, the actress. And to show you what a class act he was, he is said to have handed out pieces. Pieces of her pubic hair to his friends. A class guy. Yeah, otherwise, he had no schooling. He came from poverty, but he was smart, self-taught, educated himself well. He spoke well. He was cognizant. But again, he was obsessed with respectability. He wanted to be seen in his later years now as a legitimate businessman, a civic-minded community leader. I got to say, in fairness to him, he gave away a tremendous amount of money. In one instance, $300,000 in 1954, I don't know what that would be today, to clear a slum and try to put up some decent housing for poor people. And he gave to a lot of causes. When I say he was a political power, it didn't do him a lot of good, really, as far as influence went. But because the government closed in on him anyway. I think he was doling out that money again because he wanted to be respectable. He wanted to be accepted in that community, and that's one way to do it, through politics. I worked in politics in D.C. for a long time, so a lot of people still doing that today, buying respectability with big donations and so forth. Anyway, while he was trying to do that, in the meantime, his goons were out punching their way into legitimate corporations so that he had a tax front. He was in a lot of trouble. The government had come after him twice, one on a jukebox thing he was running, and they didn't nail him on that, but they did tie him to the jukeboxes. And he then had to explain his income, which, believe it or not, at the time, wasn't illegal if you declared the income, and he didn't completely declare the income, and that woke up the IRS. Well, they wanted him anyway. The government just wanted a piece of this guy. Then they got him for jury tampering. Again, he beat that, but it was close. And now the IRS was up, and they were on him bad, big time. They were going to nail him eventually because it wasn't something these guys thought about, tax evasion. In the interim, he was being muscled by Vito Genovese because Zwillman was an old friend of Frank Costello's. He had sided with Costello in a power grab. By the other guys had failed. So the Genovese and Gambino families with Costello going to help Zwillman. Zwillman wasn't on the muscle end. He didn't have an army of gunners hanging around. He had some. Usually he relied on the mafia and Costello for that. He was gone. The Genovese and Gambino people were moving into his rackets in northern New Jersey. And there really wasn't anything he could do about it. You add it all up, he was in bad physical health. His stepson said he was badly, badly depressed. And on February 27th, 1959, he went down into his basement, tied a plastic rope around a rafter over there, and hung himself. Um, there's an insane story going around that the Genovese, Vito Genovese, probably ordered him hung because they had found some bruises on his hands and so forth. Uh, the other side of that is the bruises they found. Something came from a domestic dispute, but anyway, they found some bruises. So they thought, well, the lunatics got together and said, well, Genovese had him. Look, you're Vito Genovese. You want this guy killed. What are you going to do? Tell two goons with an IQ of 12 to go over to this guy's high-end neighborhood, beat him up. This is a guy from the streets, too, so he's not going down easy. Drag him down into the basement, tie him up, rust him up a little bit, leave marks on him, and tie him up to the rafter and hang him? Or would you just say, look, go over to Zwillman's house, or when he leaves the house, get him something, put one in the head, one in the heart? That's probably a little bit better. So that ended Zwillman, and it also drew a close, really, for the Prohibition era gangsters that were aging and going to prison. And Zwillman was one of the last ones.